freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 209 of Gun Freedom Radio. I know that was worth a wow, right?
Yeah.
209 episodes. Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. We have a great show today. It is titled The Bible and Self-Defense, and we have Greg Hopkins.
Absolutely. Greg is the author of a book called A Time to Kill, The Bible and Self-Defense. Self-defense from a biblical perspective, which is that the Bible commands Christians to be good stewards, prepared to protect self and the innocent from hostile attack. Greg is a defense attorney, prosecutor, and former judge, as well as a practicing weapons instructor, expert witness, and Bible teacher. Greg Hopkins is highly qualified to address these controversial topics. I am excited to dive into this. Welcome back to the show, Greg.
Thank you so much. 209 shows. You all have just blessed a lot of people with your information and everything, and I thank you for having me on.
Oh,
well,
thank you, Greg.
You know, this has got to be a hot topic, Greg, with all the stuff going on right now, especially, you know, people are trying to figure out, how do I defend my family? How do I defend my property? It's got to be tough right now.
Yes, and see, this is one of the things that we have to be really careful about as a lawyer, because you have to know the defense of property laws for your state. And, most people think, if some guy's running off with your car, you can just shoot him. No, in my state, Alabama, only if he tries to run you over with a car. Or he's actually carjacking you. So, simply because a person is near your house and doing ornery things doesn't mean that you can shoot them. For instance, arson. Arson has a very, very tiny window of when you can use deadly force in my state, or really I think if you check in any state, it's only when the bad guy is on the backswing with that Molotov cocktail that you can shoot him. Once he lets go of it, the crime is over. You can't shoot him. Save the occupants of the building. But it's it's a very narrow thing. So you need to know the law.
No, that really does. It does make sense. And it really is that fine-tuned. And there are so many nuances. Since all of these, we're sitting in the studio. This will play a week later, but we're sitting in the studio on Monday, June 1st, and in 2020. And as we're recording this, there's supposed to be protests for the death of a man named George Floyd, but they have turned into opportunistic, destructive riots in multiple cities across the nation.
Yes.
And there have been indications and quotes that people have aired on national news and on social media that there's been a threat against. I guess the quote is, "This is just beginning. We're coming to the suburbs. We're bringing this to."
Yes,
right?
I've seen that.
So I personally have had multiple people reach out to me through my text or my Facebook Messenger or whatever, and they're like, "So what are my rights to defend myself?" And as you said, there are so many nuances, and it depends on what state. And so it's really hard for me to answer their question, but go ahead with what you were going to say.
Yeah, and see, this is why you have to get with a gun nut lawyer like myself, who actually studies these things and teaches these things and has done criminal trials about them. Because you can look on some fine websites. I mean, USCCA and a bunch of others, and they'll say, for instance, Alabama is a Castle Doctrine state. It is not. If you read the self-defense statute, it says you can use deadly force in any degree of burglary. Okay, so that would make you think that. But then you read the burglary statutes, and it's got all these ifs, ands, and buts about what a person has to be doing in your house before you can actually use the deadly force. Now, there's a savings clause in one of the three statutes for a home, but for a business, you would still, if you're standing there in your business and they're coming in, then it's a strange thing with looters and things. Are they actually attacking you, or are they just busting stuff up? If that's the case, your statute may not allow you to interfere with deadly force. You can use reasonable force. So you can talk about bear spray or even throwing chairs at them and stuff like that. Although throwing chairs could be deadly force, but you see, this is where we get mixed up, and every state is different. So get some legal training on this. This is the kind of thing. If a person's throwing bricks through your own window and your 4-year-old granddaughter is standing right there at the window, well, then at that point, a person could reasonably say they are a danger of death or permanent maiming injury to that child. So possibly you could shoot outside your house and stop that person. But you've got to talk to someone who knows the case law, that interprets the statutes and knows the statutes and can teach these things to you. My class goes 6 hours.
Well, and the law is one element of it. And then civilly, the bad guy, the guy throwing the Molotov cocktail or the brick or whatever, her family could end up suing you civilly.
Yes.
And that's a whole different ball game. They could ruin you financially, even if you were in your rights. There are ways that they can still ruin you financially. And it's really tricky, and you've got to have the training, and you've got to have good legal representation.
Right, because and you have to know your state statutes. Many states now, I believe Arizona does, but I'm guessing you'll probably know, will tell you that if you act according to the law, then and you are not charged, or you're not indicted, or you're not convicted at trial, then the bad guy that you shot throwing the brick in, you cannot sue you, nor can his heir, his representative of the state. That's the law in Alabama since 2005. But if it's not the law in your state, then what would happen to me is, on the front page of the paper would be local lawyer slays teenager.
Yep.
The guy's 19, and I've got to have at least $100,000 for defense, because my homeowner's insurance will say, "What, did you shoot him intentionally?" I said, "Well, of course I did. He was trying to kill people in my house." I said, "Oh, well, I'm sorry. Look at your homeowners. It only covers accidents." Bye.
Wow.
You're stuck.
They'll on that headline, they'll call him a boy.
Yes.
You murdered a boy. He's 19. He's the aggressor. Legally, he's an adult. And so, there's all of that at play.
And well, I do want to interfere here
Sure.
a second. But the problem is too, Greg, is that you don't have all day to think about when you're going to defend yourself. It's a split second choice to decide whether or not you're going to. And so you need to study these laws now before it happens, so that you can at least prepare yourself.
I was in fear for my life means legally nothing. The next thing the cops and the prosecutor are going to say is, why? And you have to comply to a hypothetical person called the ordinary, reasonable, prudent person under like or similar circumstances, and the measure of whether you did is the statutory law of your state. So simply saying, I was in fear for my life, that means nothing.
Right. And sorting, you could be in the right and you still could cost thousands and thousands of dollars just to defend yourself, even though you were in the right. So you do have to be careful. So I assume that the shoot 'em and sort it out later law doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like it used to be in the old days.
Let's not
shoot
do
'em,
that.
we'll sort it out later.
Let's not do that.
No, it doesn't work. No.
But remember too, in a riot situation, the common law was that a malefactor in a riot, everybody in the riot group shares the responsibility and the liability of that person. However, you've got 20 Antifa guys that don't care about lying. They're going to say, you shot the guy in cold blood.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's another thing to think about. They're going to put their right hand up in court and lie for their buddy.
Right. And now they're saying there's two different things. There's rioters and there's looters. And how do you tell the difference between the two? That's going to be another question down the road.
Yes.
Well, and everything we've talked about here so far really isn't specific to any particular religion, much less Christianity and the Bible. But there is a level of confusion out there in the spiritual communities, in the religious communities. And so there are Christians that feel that, it is wrong somehow to offer up defense of life, someone else's life, or self-defense. And that's why I think your book is it's so important to read, because you really break it all down. And so, from what I believe I know about Scripture is that God tells us that life is precious, that our bodies are temples, and that we are to protect the persecuted. So talk to us, Greg, about why so many Christians do feel that self-defense is something we are not allowed to do by God, and where does the confusion come from?
Okay. The idea of pacifism is not found in the Bible, and that is one of the points of my book. It came about in the 2nd century AD from a couple of what we call church fathers, and we don't need to go into them right now. The point is, however, is that Christians have had to be kind of schizophrenic on this throughout history. If the Roman Empire didn't fight the barbarians, then the church would have been eradicated. If the church had not fought against Muslim invasions, once again, the church would have been eradicated. Christianity would have been gone. And so what the book does is explain key verses like turn the other cheek and live by the sword, die by the sword in their biblical context, starting with Genesis. What's God's attitude to all this all the way through? And the point is, as you said, that God commands us to defend the innocent, and he blesses us for doing so. Now, the problem today is this idea of pacifism comes from several places, and one is our baby boomer generation. The people in our generation were protesting Vietnam War, all this kind of thing. There were prominent church figures that also protested and so on, and we have adopted the idea that all violence is bad. The really stupid statement, violence never solved anything. Well, how about the 4 million blacks that were freed in the Civil War? How about the billions of people that were freed from Japanese tyranny? And the Japanese, by the way, are at that time were the biggest racists on earth, as bad as the Nazis. If you weren't Japanese, you weren't human. And same thing with Hitler. Sometimes violence is the only answer to evil. So we have to understand this. In America, though, we have gotten away so far away from this and into political ideas that have become mixed with biblical ideas. And the whole point of my book is if we find out what God says about something, then let's do what God says. If he says you're allowed to defend yourself, then let's do it. If he says no, okay, we're victims. And Christians today, there's about 2 billion Christians, 260 million are under official government persecution right now. 7 out of 10 of those, there's 22 really bad countries doing it, are doing it to a great extent as a matter of policy, and 7 out of 10 of those are Muslim. But of course, the Chi-Coms, the People's Republic of China and the North Koreans are being communists. They are literally destroying large churches, knocking them down, and they are rewriting the Bible to be approved by Chairman Mao's Little Red Book, and they send spies into people, and the official church there also tries to coerce various Christian groups to be in those. At home here in America, the most persecuted group are Jews, and this is one of the reasons why my book it contains the whole Bible, because it's very clear in the Old Testament. In Isaiah chapter 54, verse 17, God says, I'm the one that gave you the skill and knowledge for the smith who blows the coal and brings forth the sword for its work. God says, I'm the one that gave you the tech, to make weapons and defend yourselves. And so we need to understand that God doesn't want us to be whipping boys or anything. And being meek means power under control. Blessed are the meek. It means I'm totally submitted to God. But meek does not mean weak. Ask the temple money changers when Jesus whipped them out of the place.
You said that people consider they use violence to defend yourself. I don't call it violence. It's just like I don't call a firearm a weapon. If it's used to defend, it's really not a weapon to me. And I think that if I stop a crime and I use a firearm to stop the crime, I'm not using violence to stop a crime.
It's countervailing force, but it is a firearm as a tool.
Right.
I can use a hammer to defend myself. Now, primary use of a hammer is to build something, but at the same time, you can build a nation with a firearm, as George Washington did. Okay,
right. And they didn't use violence to do. I look at violence as something that you just go tear people up and kill and just maim and whatever, and it's not. It's like you said with a hammer. If it's using a hammer, it's a tool. If you use a hammer as a crime, it's violent. But if you use it to defend yourself, it's no longer violence.
Yes, that is why it is so important we act by the rules. Massad Ayoob starts out all of his Mag 2030 classes by saying, if you act according to the standard by which you will be judged, you will not be found wanting in the judgment. And this goes both for biblically and for our acts in self-defense as well.
Wow. There's so much here to chew on. I mean, even so much as what you're talking about is like a connotation of a word,
Yes.
And I'm such a word nerd that now I want to go back and look up the etymology of the word violence and see, is there a time that it's not appropriately used because we're talking about self-defense? But I love your words, countervailing force. I mean, that's it right there.
I have a motto when I teach anything, whether it's the Bible or history or anything, and it is context is everything, which I think is what Dan was saying. Context of the situation and the moment is what will justify us under the law, but that means we have to be thinking practitioners of both the law and the Bible, and so. This is why it's so important right now. We have this untapped group out there that are Christians and Jews in this nation, and they don't understand whether they can defend themselves or not. We in the Second Amendment movement need to reach out to these people and train them and help them. This is the way, if we draw close to them and become their trainers and advisors, and we are able to use a biblical basis for saying, yes, God is not just okay with this, he's for this, then we can help Jews and Christians to not be victims anymore.
Absolutely. And that takes me, did you have a question, Dan?
No,
That takes me to my next question, is that the idea of having armed and trained security teams in churches, in houses of worship, in the United States, the land of religious freedom and freedom from persecution. That is where we are supposed to be sitting right now. And
Right.
yet we are having this new surge of wanting and needing trained security teams. It seems like something from a bygone era in the world. But more and more religious organizations are training for safety within the walls of their churches, their synagogues, their mosques. So talk to us about this. Is this a future focused trend, or is this like a momentary reaction that's going to, fade away with time?
There was the church shooting in Texas in December, which we've all seen the films of, where the crazy guy came in with a shotgun, and he killed 2 of the security team members, but the third one got him in the head from about 45 feet. There, that really woke up a lot of people. March the 5th, just before Alabama shut down, I was privileged to be in a meeting over in the next county here. We had 700 plus people in that church building wanting to learn how to start security teams. The meeting was sponsored by the Morgan County Sheriff's Department, and the Alabama Attorney General was there and spoke. This is how important and how that we think this threat is, and how interested people are in it. And he was there under some stress, because he had to get down to South Alabama to witness an execution at midnight, and yet that man thought it was important enough to be 250 miles away to speak to these people before he went there. 700 people, and myself and several other trainers and law enforcement people talked to these people, and they're ready to drink this in, because they understand there is a certain threat. Now, one of the things that people don't recognize is the very same crimes that happen out in the world, they happen in the church. You want to protect your nursery area. You want to make sure you have background checks on people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You need video cameras. You need an adequate team, so that you've got enough people that if someone has to take a break or is sick, you've still got the place covered. All these things. This book, I'll recommend this. This is Keeping Your Church Safe by Ron Aguiar. He was the head of security, I don't know if he still is, for Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky, 25,000 member church. And it a little 120-page book, but it covers so many things, like how to handle protesters. And that you can start with is Keeping Your Church Safe. It's on Amazon by a fellow named Ron Aguiar. But we have to understand that rapes happen in churches, murders happen in churches, domestic violence, which is the number one reason for violence in the courts, is also the number one reason for violence in churches as well. There are custody disputes. One of the things I tell churches is you have to demand custody papers. So if someone comes in and tries to pick up a child and it's not their weekend, then you can just freeze the scene, call the cops, and let the cops figure it out. Restraining orders. If people have restraining orders, we've had this happen in Alabama, where stalkers who were under restraining orders showed up at churches. Oh, I'm just here to worship God. No, you're here to harass your former spouse. We have to be aware of this. A man was caught down in Birmingham, Middle Eastern man, by a security team, and then police closed in. Didn't want him. He had a rental car. He didn't want him to take a picture of the car or the license plate, and it turns out that he was an alien here on a visa. He was scoping out he was taking pictures of the mega church from the parking lot. And so the law enforcement was notified for about 4 counties around, the FBI too. All of these things that happen outside happen in the church. The people who are going to kill are generally crazy. And so far, they've almost all been just one person. That's a great thing for the security team. The second thing is that what happens is, like the fellow in Texas, they come into church and they've got these crazy expectations. And the bigger your church is, the more likely you are to attract these people who see the church as their last chance before the insane asylum to get themselves straightened out. And if the church does not meet their perverted sense of right, wrong, and whatever their needs are, just like this guy in Texas, then they will come back looking for vengeance. And that is the actual archetype of who is going to come at your congregation.
That the video of that church shooting was amazing, because that's probably going to save thousands of people's lives, because now there are pastors that didn't allow guns. They see how effective this was. How could you deny that? How could you deny having a security team at your church to protect the flock? Right?
Well, people they don't know how to get started. That's the main thing, is they come. The first thing you do, number one, folks, is get a lawyer. Okay. not a criminal lawyer like me. And that is redundant, criminal lawyer. But they're
cute.
But I'm talking a real civil lawyer that knows civil liability and things like that. I immersed myself in criminal law during my entire active career. But you want a guy who is either on retainer or a member of your congregation that can help walk you through. Number two, if you get your congregation to find whatever church, and the bigger the better, has been at this the longest. Because I've been working with the biggest congregation in North Alabama for 11 years now. And that was the first church I started working with. These people have written the book. They've made all the mistakes. All right. So you don't have to reinvent the light bulb. And they are godly people who are willing to go anywhere and teach other people what they know. The other thing is people in the Second Amendment, people who own gun stores like you all, people who people who are trainers of how to shoot and everything. This is all part of the process. And liability is the key word that you need to keep talking to these people about, because if your team isn't trained to some standard, then I guarantee they're going to go after you. You say, people say, are we going to get sued? I said, of course you're going to get sued. The question is whether you're going to win or not. You'll always get sued.
I'm not an attorney and I don't practice, I'm only one on TV maybe once in a while, but in Arizona, I understand that if somebody comes in shooting and a person that wants to protect them accidentally shoots somebody else, that the person that started the commotion in the first place is liable.
You mean if they hit an innocent bystander? Yes. In every state, if you hit an innocent bystander, you are liable both criminally and civilly. So that's another point. So this is why training is so important. So in your gun shops, if you have a gun shop, if you're a trainer and you go to gun shows and you're signing up people, mention these are already your natural customers. Most of them are going to be going to church anyway, and say, hey, I will train your church, sir, and tell them I'm USCCA, I'm NRA certified, I'm a former cop, instructor, firearms instructor, and I'll be happy to come and train your congregation. And you see, then we are reaching out to a whole new group of people out there who will come in to support the Second Amendment.
So do
And
you
they'll-
think that? Do you think, Greg, that churches should should show that they have security force, or should they keep it undercover?
You mean a security force versus anybody wants to have a gun? Just
Well, should
help out?
should it be
No,
known to the public that they have a security force in the church?
Okay. The public, it will quickly become apparent, because usually the security force has some kind of an ID or something. But if you are, then that should be one of the things. Be upfront about it, because there are people that are going to say, whoa, you mean you're going to shoot somebody if they could? Well, yeah, if they're trying to kill us, yeah, or you, we're going to protect you. Well, I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, that's fine. There's 500 churches here in town. Pick one. There, and you don't argue with them. You just let them go. Yes, you're upfront with people, and you say, and also this is why when I teach my classes on the Bible and self-defense and the law of self-defense, it's a total of 10 hours. I do 3 hours on Friday, 7 hours on Saturday. Then I'm in bed for 4 days.
For sure.
But I always tell them, paid ministry staff is free. I charge $25 less per person for churches than I do for businesses and citizens who take my class, because that's kind of like my little tithe, but also it's imperative that the ministers and the people who are doing things will, if they're going to be protected by the security team, maybe they ought to know exactly what the security team has learned and why they've learned it and all this kind of thing too.
Right.
So I say, come in free.
Right. As you can see in the video in Texas, the man was well trained.
And that makes all the difference.
The man in Vegas, in Texas, that defended the church was well trained.
Well trained.
Well trained.
A lot of training.
Yeah, it's the training will differ depending on the church and what their resources are. But this is why you get with the bigger churches. They will help you with this kind of training. They may donate time from their trainers and so on, and help you all fill in the gaps. This is another reason why the lawyer is important, is because he should be taking the training as well, or she should be going right through the training with the team. They should be setting up the standards that the team will be operating by, so that you know that you're within the legal areas of the law. The more training you have always goes in your favor. If you look at the ordinary, reasonable, prudent person, what does the ordinary person do when they buy a gun? Well, they load it. They may shoot it at the range a couple times, and they put it in their bedside drawer, and they go, I'm protected, which is about like, buying a grand piano, never having a lesson, and telling people you're Elton John. But that's the ordinary person. But if you take that first class, you are now a prudent person. You have gotten some skill from a professional on the technique of shooting. I call that the hardware. And then you go find some gun nut lawyer, and you spend 7 or 8 hours with him, and you actually pay the money and all this. You've actually made a commitment. You're a prudent, reasonable person. See, I went beyond the ordinary guy to get this training and to know this discipline. I got my good hardware and my software together.
Yeah.
This
awesome.
only helps us, you see.
It does. So, Greg, we're starting to run out of time, but I wanted to ask you, do you have a copy of your book that you could hold up for the folks that are watching this on video?
Yes, my book is available on Amazon. It can be ordered from any bookstore. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me personally at Hopkins_Greg at Comcast.net. That is all lowercase, and also lowercase. You can get a hold of my company that sells my video for Alabama law, legal defense, www.alabamallegaldefense.com. That's also, and then there's A Time to Kill, the Bible, and self-defense. This is on about 300 pages, and it also covers Jesus in the military. He never told anybody to quit the Army. I think if you know someone with PTSD, this is a great book to do, that might be able to help them. And it has 3 chapters on the Bible and the death penalty. So in case you're ever on a jury, on a capital murder jury, the first thing at the sentencing part, the defense attorney is going to say is, "The good book says thou shalt not kill." And you can come back and say, "Au contraire, mon frere. It says
Not what
thou
it
shalt not
says.
murder," which is what your boy did. Okay.
Yes. And that takes us right back to that. Words really, the connotation of them, the etymology of them, where they came from, what they truly, truly mean. It's so, so important. And
Yes.
I think that, that is always where the best stuff is found, is really engaging your mind, as you've said. And just as we wrap up, I just wanted to touch on this, that, those of us that are spiritual humans, we understand we are fallen creatures who live in a fallen world. And so we're trying everything we can to just be
Yes.
good people, as sinless as possible. And then you have these groups out there like the Moms Demand Action and the Everytown for Gun Safety, and all these groups that their main tool is to heap guilt and shame, right? And dig into emotion. And it gets really hard for people that they don't really understand the nuance of the words and the difference between thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not murder, things like that. It's
That's
harder
right. Yes.
for us to straighten our spine and say, I don't know what gibberish you're talking. You moms who demand whatever, you're demanding that, I am disarmed and so I can't protect my child. That's gibberish. I'm not going to buy into 1 second of that. You can feed your guilt sandwich to somebody else who's hungry for it, because I'm not.
A perfect illustration of that, Cheryl, is the word Jesus used when he said, if a man slaps you on your on your right cheek. The word in Greek is rapesi. It is not a fist coming at you that's intended to break your jaw. It's a sharp slap of correction given to an uppity teenager or a slave. It is meant to humiliate, not to harm. Okay, so see the definitions of words. It really, you're right. It has everything to do with what is going on. That's why we lawyers get paid to, well, you know what, it has to do all with the definition of what is. That's what we get paid to do, is argue.
But I just heard Clinton. I just thought I heard Clinton in there somewhere.
I think Bill Clinton cut into our feed here somehow. That's how it sounded. No, that's so true. And Greg, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Thank you for all you do. This is such important work. And I know that this is going to encourage people across the nation to learn more for themselves, ease that guilt burden, ease that confusion that they've maybe been struggling with about, how can I be a Christian and a self-defense prepared-minded person? Yeah, you can be both. It's an amazing world to live in. Greg, we so appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl and Dan, and God bless you all. Y'all are putting out vital information and a great educational resource. Keep it up, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Greg. Good seeing you.
We will definitely have you back on again.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too. God bless.
God
Fantastic.
Bless. Wow.
Oh, man.
So
that was a lot to unpack.
But I'm hung up on something. I have a question for you, Cheryl.
Yes. What?
World War II, Japan.
Okay.
They came over here and they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Indeed they did.
Was that violent?
That was violent.
Yes. I would agree to you that that's violent.
Yes.
Then we got on our machine guns and our airplanes and ships, and we shot back at them
Mhm.
to defend ourselves.
Mhm.
Was that violence? No. Don't. I'm not going to ask you. I don't. I want to. It is not violence
It
to
was-
defend yourself.
It was not an offensive move. I mean, there were offensive moves in the course of the World War II
It was not violent.
battlefields, but it was definitely defensive. But they were using a form of violence
No,
to
they
defend.
were not. That is not violence. Is when you go and you attack somebody. That is violence to me.
All
I'm
right.
going to rewrite this dictionary that what they call Webster and Todd dictionary, because it's just like a firearm is not a weapon. I do not own a weapon in my house.
Mhm,
I do not sell a weapon in my store.
mhm,
A weapon is used as violence.
mhm. Well,
To
and
defend yourself, you're not using a weapon. You're using a tool, but it is not a weapon.
but it's even ingrained. What do they call it? It's a CCW, a concealed carry weapons permit.
No, it's concealed carry whatever. What's wrong
You
with
know
you?
what? That
It is. It's concealed carry whatever. A knife, a gun. Didn't you know that?
I know it now. I feel ever so much more
Just want you guys to know.
educated.
I don't carry a weapon. I will never use a firearm against somebody in violence.
That's it.
There you go.
That's something to chew on.
Yes,
So
chew on it.
everybody, look up that etymology of the word violence and see what we can do with this. And maybe there's something there that Dan's hit on.
There's so many words out there that people don't want us to use because it's hurtful or it's whatever they might be. Well, if we're going to use those, if we're going to fix those words, then we're going to fix violence
Mhm.
and we're going to fix weapons.
Okay. And we really do have to wrap, but as I said, we're sitting in the studio June 1st, 2020, this crazy, bizarre year, and they're still sending every single day through one of the news sources how many new coronavirus cases. Like, why do I need to know this? Why is this important to me? The numbers aren't
But wait.
rising. They're not spiking. Could we put that one to rest?
Is it?
Because now we need to know the numbers of riots out there.
No,
apparently.
wait. I'm confused. I woke up a month ago and they said the coronavirus was going to overtake the world.
Well, it's a little longer than a month. But
Okay.
basically.
And then I go, oh, we have relief because now it's just killer wasps. All we had to do is worry about the killer
I think we're
wasps.
murder
Wasps, yeah.
Let's say our words right, Mr. Todd.
And so, how about violent wasps? Or weapon wasps? WW, weapon wasp.
Weapon wasp.
Anyway, so then the weapon wasp didn't work. And so now we have riots, right? We have riots.
Apparently we do. A lot of
So,
fun. A lot of fun.
yeah,
2020.
Welcome 2020.
Oh, you had a good one yesterday. What did you say? That the slogan for the year should have been, because 2020 is about vision.
Oh, we should have saw that coming. 2020. We should have saw it coming.
Ba-dum-bum.
Yeah.
Dan will be here all week.
Yes, I'll be here all week.
Tip your wait staff.
Just remember what a weapon is and what violence is.
All right, we have got to wrap. Thank you so much to our amazing listeners and viewers, because you can see us on YouTube and Gunstreamer, and you can listen to us on our website, Gunstreamer. All right, let's say that again. gunfreedomradio.com. Hit the on-demand tab and binge listen to your heart's content all of the 208 other episodes that we have posted there. And you can also click the guest tab and you'll see photos and bios and links to all the guests we've ever had on. It's a wonderful resource. Please be sure to use it. Thank you. Speaking of guests, thank you so much to our awesome friend, Greg Hopkins. And his book is, it's like rich with knowledge and information. Please take the time to look that up. It's called A Time to Kill.
I love that cover with the cross, and then the shadow of the cross is a sword.
Mm-hmm.
That's very clever.
Mm-hmm. The Bible and self-defense. Until next time, for the love of everything, please pray for this nation. I mean, come on, please. please, whoever's sitting out there and you haven't prayed for the nation yet, this is your turn. It's your turn. You do it, please, because we all need to be in this effort.
Yes.
Pray for our leaders.
Okay.
All of them, Dan.
Even the one.
Even I'm sure.
Do we
there's more
really?
than one
Are we? Do we
that
have
you
any
don't
leaders
like.
right now?
Yeah.
We have a lot of control freaks.
Yeah. And that's
You know?
that's the thing. Are
And-
they our representatives, or are
Right.
they our elected officials, or are they our leaders?
And
I
that's
mean,
another thing I'm gonna bring up to you. So people are giving Ducey a lot of heat because he
who's
started
Ducey? For
Governor
people that
Ducey.
don't live in Arizona, who's
Governor
Ducey?
Ducey is our governor in Arizona, and nothing bad to say. He's got a tough job right now, but they're complaining about the curfew that he has at 8 o'clock. There's a lot of governors in other states that are doing it too, and that's a hard question because they're telling us that we have to be home at 8 o'clock.
Mhm.
But if you look at the hard facts about it, it's basically saying you can still shop, you can still drive your car, you can still do everything you normally do. You just can't assemble in one area a bunch of people. Now that's freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, right?
Mhm.
So there is a question there, but it's hard because what do you do? If you've got a group of people and they get to be where they're out of control group of people, what do you do? So my main prayer today is to the nation and to the governors that are having to deal with this issue right now. So there you go.
So you're going to pray for all of them, even the
I
ones you
didn't
don't
say-
like,
I didn't say anything about the ones.
especially the ones you don't
I
like.
didn't say anything about the ones.
Be good to each other. Have a great one.
Yeah.
And